One of the most important skills that you'll ever master is knowing when to cut your losses. And this is, this is so key, so key. And we're going to talk about it right now. In the late 90s, during the first dot-com bubble, I was playing that market. I was up to here. I was just, buying this, that, the other, Google, Yahoo, all the names, some names that you've forgotten. Well, then there were names that had yet to exist, but my point. I was buying stocks left and right and spending an awful lot of time researching these stocks and researching which would go up and, trying to make decisions, accurate forecasts of what would happen. And, quite frankly, retrospectively, I could have just fucking flipped a coin. Okay, really. Yeah. Because at that time, in my very early 30s, I was 30, 31, 32, around there, I was ruled by my emotions and I was under the sway of two key biases that made me make horrible decisions. And I didn't even realize how horrible they were at the time. Okay. The two biases were quite simple. One was the sunk cost fallacy. Now, the sunk cost fallacy is very simple. What happens is that a lot of times you have taken a particular course of action, right? And you've invested a lot of time and effort into that course of action. So when it comes to the moment to decide whether to continue with that course of action or not, rather than look at the reality as it is at that moment, the ghost of the effort in the past sort of like encroaches on your current decision and skews that decision. And I remember very clearly, one time I was studying this name of the stock. It slips my mind right now, it doesn't matter. I was studying this stock and I studied this company and I looked through a whole bunch of documents, a whole bunch of stuff, statements, this, that, the other. All kinds of documentation, spreadsheets, this, that, the other, right? And when it came time to make a decision whether to go into the stock or not, what happened was that I found myself deciding to buy into the stock, not because my analyses had taught me that the stock was going to rise. On the contrary, everything I'd studied said that the stock was going to do just middling or maybe even go down. But I bought into it because I'd spent so much time studying it that the thought of not actually buying it, it felt like I had wasted all that time studying it. So I bought the stock, even though my research and analysis had proven to me that I was going to lose money. And of course I did. I was a fucking idiot, right? I was a fool. That's the sunk cost fallacy. The effort in the past skews your decision in the present. That's the first fallacy. The other one is a very common one called the loss aversion bias. Any psychologist can tell you about this. It's very simple. See, it is that losses affect us twice as powerfully as wins, okay? An example. Say you buy a stock at 85, right? And the stock goes up to 90. Great! It goes up to 100. Even better, right? But then from 100 it goes down to 95. And you're like, well, I'm still 10 ahead, right? And then it starts going down to 90. Well, I'm still 5 ahead. And then it hits 85. You should sell, right? It's but then you think to yourself, well, it might go back to 100, maybe even 110. So you hold on to it because you figure, well, I haven't lost anything, right? You hold on to it and it goes from 85 down to 80. You've lost 5. That 5 psychologically feels as powerful as if you'd gone up to 95, okay? If you'd won 10, okay? The losses are twice as powerful as the wins. And so that's what's happened to tons of traders. They hold on to a position because they lost some money, and the fact of losing it, that is actualizing their loss, because once you sell a stock, that's when you really, you lost, right? You don't sell the stock, you hold on to it, and it keeps on going down. And it keeps on going down, 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 down. And as it keeps on going down, it becomes harder and harder for you to sell. Because as it goes down, the emotional toll it will take on you becomes greater and greater. That's why there are so many famous traders who sometimes get caught in a particular trade and chase the losses all the way to the bottom and get completely wiped out. This happens all the time. It happens all the time. And sophisticated traders, long-term capital management back in '98, which almost crashed the entire world economy. Long-term capital management was run by John Meriwether, one of the greatest, if not the greatest, bond traders in history. And it had what, 1 or 2 Nobel Prize winners on its board of directors? I mean, these were people who knew what the fuck they were doing. And they chased their losses all the way to the bottom, and they broke their own hedge fund, right? That's how it happened. They were chasing their losses because it hurt too much. Okay, now, that's loss aversion bias. That's loss aversion, and people, it happens in every situation. Now, I'm talking about stocks here. Stocks, bonds, fucking trivial. It's not an important aspect of your life insofar as cutting your losses. Because you see, the things that are going to hurt you more are not stocks. It's not going to be money. It's going to be people, okay? You are going to get to points in your life where you're going to have to realize that it's time to cut your losses. And it will be 1,000 times more painful than losing $1 million, okay? But that's the reality of it. And that's the truth, and that's why we're talking here. Okay? Because I'm not telling you, how to avoid losing money on stocks. I'm telling you how to avoid losing your soul by holding on to the wrong relationships. Let me give you an example. John, he's a good buddy of yours. You've known him high school, college. He's a great guy. Great guy. You like the same books. You went out partying together, had a great time, talk about movies. He's your buddy. He's your pal. He's your mate, right? Well, John, he goes from coke, which you did together once in a while, he goes and slowly slides into heroin, and all of a sudden he's into crystal meth, and all of a sudden the guy's just going down the tubes, right? And you help him because he's your friend. You've got all these years together, right? That sunk cost bias coming in. You've got all these years together, and he's a junkie now. But you want to help him. So you invite him to come over to your place, and, within a couple of days, he's stolen your TV and your computer in order to go and get money for more smack, right? You stick him in rehab. You blow the 5-10 grand to stick him in rehab. And what happens? He's in their rehab 2-3 days, and then he runs away, and, they find him in some flop house, a needle in his arm, high as a kite, and the ODs, and he's in the hospital, and the fucker is a big old mess, right? You are thinking to yourself, if I only give him enough attention and help, in a year's time, he'll be better, he'll have a great girlfriend, a great job, it'll be a great life, and he'll come to me and hug me and say, thank you so much for helping me, and look how I am now. That's what you're going to be thinking. And so you're going to be thinking to yourself, if I just give a little bit more, if I just invest a little bit more time, effort, energy, things will turn around. It's always darkest before the dawn, right? Right? Unfortunately not. Unfortunately, and this is a truth that you're going to have to learn, a lot of times, it is darkest right before you crash into the wall. For a while, I was pursuing some professional opportunities, and I gave it my all between 2005 and 2010. 6 years. I gave it my all. I just went for broke on some particular thing that I wanted to do, and it failed. I came so close, and unfortunately at the time I didn't even realize how close I had come. Had I known, I would have made the right decisions at that moment, because some of the decisions I made were just bad decisions on my part. And, what's a guy going to do? Sometimes you make the wrong calls. But my point, for 5 years, 6 years, I pursued this course of action. I invested more time, more effort, more energy. I could not let go. I kept on throwing more and more effort, throwing good money after bad, metaphorically speaking, because it wasn't about money. It was about effort. It was about time. It was about psychological energy, emotional capital that I sunk in to a particular course of action, which I thought would come out a winner, and it didn't. See? Because life is not fair. Sometimes you give it your all and it just doesn't work out. Okay? Think about that. Think about that. Okay? Know when to cut your losses. Know when to say enough.